Hey there, Professor Cloud here, or Brian if you prefer. In this video, I want to continue a conversation that I've been having in some other videos about some tooling that Microsoft provides to help you with ARM template development, deployment, and management. Some of these tools you may have never seen or heard of before, which is why I wanted to make you aware of them, because I've found them very, very valuable over the years as I have created numerous templates for customers. And whenever I have needed something to help me get over the hump with new resources that I've never spun up before, or how to potentially get a resource to do something I didn't know it could do, these tools have very much helped me. I talked about the export template feature in one video, which provides a ARM template export of an individual resource or multiple resources, which will get you up and running very, very quickly for development, or it could help you with backup and recovery, or disaster recovery, things like that. In this video, we want to talk about the Resource Explorer. The Resource Explorer is going to provide you access to all of the resources in all of the subscriptions that you have access to in one place, and the JSON representation of each individual resource as you click on them. Meaning, you're not going to get a full-fledged ARM template that you could deploy tomorrow in another subscription. It's just the JSON representation of that resource. So first, how do you find the Resource Explorer? Well, there's a couple of quick ways. The first is in your nav bar, everyone has the All Services button. Click on that, and then under this general section here at the very top is the Resource Explorer. You can always click on the star button to add it to your favorites list. The next is you could always go up here to the search bar, type in resource, and then under services, Resource Explorer. That's simple. Then you'll have access to it because this is a tool across the entire portal, not tied to any one resource or resource type. So we open it up. This is what you're going to get, a big blank screen. You've got a nav bar on the left and then a big window on the right. The first section is the providers section. If we open this up, this is going to give you a listing of every single provider that has been turned on for your subscription or subscriptions. A provider is nothing more than an API set of resource types. What I mean by that is Microsoft, as part of the way that the Azure cloud has been developed, is that everything has an API. It's a REST API. That API is part of a larger set of APIs that are all categorized under a common header, if you will. So as an example, one of the first ones that were ever created was Microsoft.network. All of the major networking services fall under Microsoft.network. So virtual networks, for example, which is the first one right here, is one of the resource types that falls under the Microsoft.network provider. Now, when you click on any one of these providers, you're going to get information about what regions the resource type is available in and which API versions you can call inside of your ARM template to deploy that particular type of resource. You may also get some additional pieces of information as well related to that particular resource type, but the major pieces are the API versions and the regions. That's all the resource providers are good for. Now, if you're working with brand new resources that Microsoft has been making available, ones that are maybe available in public preview, then this is going to be valuable to you because that list of regions is going to be tremendously smaller than what you're seeing here for virtual networks. The API version listing is going to be tremendously smaller. So this is going to help you know exactly what you can use inside of your ARM templates. Now let's go ahead and shut this down and then go to the subscriptions. All of the subscriptions that you have access to. This is still controlled by RBAC. So if you are not an owner or you have a lower level set of permissions, then it's only going to have it. You're only going to see the subscriptions that you have access to. Then you're going to see providers and resource groups. And this is how you're going to filter and find the resource that you want to see the representation of. You can either start with providers. If you open this up, you're only going to see the providers for which resources have been created. You're not going to see that entire list that we saw earlier. Only the ones that you've created. So I have resources that fall under the storage, the network, the compute, and then some that also fall under Dev Test Lab. You could also filter according to resource groups and find an individual resource that way. Whatever is going to be easiest for you. Now, in my instance, we've been talking about network. I want to look at the representation of a network interface. So I'm going to open up Microsoft.network. We've got network interfaces right here at the top. And then I'm going to select the VM ARM Demo 788. Now, as I mentioned, this is going to give me the JSON representation of just this resource and only the properties of this resource JSON block. Now, you would take this JSON block and add it to the resources array in your ARM template. But it is not enough by itself to deploy as a ARM template into a new subscription, a new resource group, what have you. Just a small piece. Now, you might be going, well, if it's not an ARM template, Brian, why would I want to use it? Because this ARM template representation, unlike what gets created by the export template tool, has every single property possible for this resource type. So using this data, combined with the documentation for the ARM template specification language, which I've provided a link to at the bottom of the article associated with this video. The link for the article is in the description. You're going to use those two pieces of information to understand what every property is and what every property corresponds to from a feature and function perspective for this network interface. And that is going to help you if you're going to be creating ARM template objects from scratch. Or if you need to understand what other properties are available to add to a block that you already have created, say from the export template. Now, one thing to keep in mind with the Resource Explorer, this is a great tool. I've used it many times. I even know the gentleman who built it. Because the Azure ARM Template Framework, the API, is what it is, it has needs of data that we as users, ARM template developers, do not need. But it needs it in order for Azure to work the way that it does. So make sure that you are aware of that and that you know what things are required and what are not, so that you can pull out the erroneous data that would absolutely cause you an error if you were to keep it inside of your ARM template. So let's start from the top here. I'm not going to go through the entire specification, but I'm going to call out a couple of common things, and then that will help you find maybe some others that are later on down in the spec. Right here at the top, we've got the name. Every single resource requires a name. But then we have the ID and the E tag. The ID is the full length primary key that the API needs to say that, yes, this particular network interface is what it is. It sits in subscription resource group. You get the idea. But if you were to store that in your ARM template, you would get an actual error. The E tag provides a way for the ARM template API to know when it last was updated. And if that E tag has changed, it knows that it's been updated recently, and it uses that information for different things. We then go under the properties section, and the very first two, again, are also things that the API needs, but we as developers do not. The provisioning state being succeeded, and the resource GUID for this particular resource. These are things that the API needs, and in most cases, if we're deploying these objects in an ARM template, the API is going to generate them during the deployment process, which means we're not having the access to that data in the development process. It's something that Azure maintains. We'll never need to worry about it. You're going to find a lot of these kinds of data points all throughout this, so you need to make sure to remove them. So either use this only for reference material to say, hey, look, I didn't know that there was a property here called idle timeout in minutes. I want to make sure that I put that in my ARM template. Well, here's exactly what it looks like, and I know that it requires a number. You can use it that way, or you can copy and paste this directly into your ARM template, but you're going to need to make sure to do the necessary editing to remove the things that only the API cares about. Hopefully this has been of value to you, and if it has, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, please make sure to hit the like button, and hopefully I'll see you in a future video.